and welcome to the Unbundled Attorney Mastermind Podcast. My name is Dave Aarons, and I'm the founder and CEO of Unbundled Attorney. In this podcast, we interview our unbundled attorneys, as well as the leading experts in the industry, to identify the best practices for converting leads into paying clients, and how to ethically and profitably deliver unbundled legal services and other affordable options in your practice. To learn more about how our exclusive unbundled leads can help you grow your practice, visit our website at unbundledattorney.com. All right, welcome to the Unbundled Attorney Mastermind Podcast. Excited to release a new episode, and also excited to be sitting next here to Brian Crone, who's a relatively new attorney. We've had some, veteran, long-term attorneys coming on in recent episodes, and so this is going to be a little bit of change of gears. We've been working together probably about 8-9 months or something like that since he first came online. So, and it's been, quite a journey of, adjustments that needed to be made, infrastructure needed to be established, a lot of systems that need to be put into place that I'm really looking forward to unpacking maybe one step at a time. And that's something that that Brian has put a lot of time into developing to a point where we're at today, where we're really on the brink of being able to execute on that. So really appreciate you taking the time to join us today, and looking forward to unpacking the saga.
Thanks for having me.
Yep. So maybe a good place to start, Brian, we can just kind of rewind the clock.
Yep.
I think maybe you can tell us, where you graduated from law school. I think how long ago was that you came out of law school?
2014.
14?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I was licensed in May of 14. I graduated right here in San Antonio at St. Mary's. And during law school, I clerked for the wonderful, wonderful opportunity to clerk for an excellent civil litigation attorney here in town. There was a group of like 20 of us that were hired for a very short-term project, and I just kind of kept coming to work, and eventually other people fell off, and that ended up kind of parlaying into 4 years of working in his office as a clerk during school, and then as a contract attorney just after I was licensed. I always kind of had the idea that I would ultimately go out on my own, and that's what I ultimately did.
Beyond what you can individually do, either things have to get more efficient, systems have to take over some of that, or you're going to need some help. And so,
as I was a solo, one human being law practice for effectively my first 2 years. But there's a limit on what one human being can do. We're currently able to roll all of our business through a systematic procedures intake to practice management, and building the systems has been a very big endeavor, but it is the whole end game, and it's been incredibly fun actually, because I really enjoy the business part sometimes more than the law.
Right. But what we can do is maybe unpack it one step at a time, right? Like, so you come on board, day one, you're getting leads.
When I first signed on with y'all, I actually was taking leads from multiple counties. I think it was Bexar, Comal, Guadalupe, and Hayes, and that was so overwhelming so immediately. And so I'd gone from growing my practice organically through referrals, where I had 27 cases on the shelf totally, from leftover from 16 and 17 at that point. It went 0 to 100, where I was not used to or prepared or could kind of expect to deal with so many things immediately. My next 5 days are now being booked up way more packed in than they'd ever been before. I would talk to people for 82 minutes, and I'd look down my phone and I would just like, why am I so tired? And I just talked for over an hour. I know all the things about this person now. I know all the stuff. I told them exactly what they need to know, and we're going to move forward with it. But ultimately, the information I got out of that, I could have obtained in about 20, which is where I've got my intake call down to now. It probably took several 80-minute phone calls and the afterwards to get it down to where I can pretty much, usually I can clock in under 15, but really 20 to have, so I'm not just like, hey, taking information out of you. You can still have a nice conversational exchange.
Okay, so let's kind of pack this down into phases, right? This is like initial intake, which I would think encompasses the initial consultation. From a process standpoint, right now,
initially I sell myself
it's a bit of a challenge too, as well, to like kind of let go of the reins a little bit and put it a little bit of faith, a little bit of trust. And faith is easier when you have training and you have experience working with them and helping them. But as a solo, when you're used to doing everything yourself, to then, okay, I can't do it all myself.
And then there's the kind of the lag time of like, it is going to take me 3x time to teach you how to do this thing, then I could just do it myself. Because ultimately I have not delegated the client outreach and the client engagement, especially the initial client engagement. I have not delegated that to another individual yet. And that's been because I've been very effective at handling that. So a lot of it's kind of a natural thing for me. And I'm selling ultimately myself, my services.
There's some training and there's some time and investment involved to make sure the person that's doing that call that would step in is capable and is able to get them in the office at the same roughly than if you were doing it on your own. And that's no easy task. So,
I tell every single client that comes to my office, like, look, my goal is to, I want to get you as accurate an estimate of what work is involved to get to your solution. I want to get as accurate an estimate as I can of what amount of money that costs and what time frame that is. It's not going to be perfect, but I want to give you data so you can make a decision on whether to hire me. That is such infinite residual value because that demonstrates honesty, that demonstrates integrity. If you do good work, the money will follow. And that's been kind of my underlying theme of building this practice.
Let's talk about some of the systems you've been working on putting into place.
I did not anticipate hiring person number 2 until probably some point in this year, but really maybe not till next year.
We kind of mess with lawyers' plans, and we kind of just throw them off.
And it's great because it's been a great outcome, but it's a much more challenging task to learn and adapt to how to best put your team in a position to succeed based on their strengths and weaknesses. We've got our systems basically in place now, and we're going to get those tweaked through the end of the year, and we should be running full steam with those by mid-January, February at the latest, which is unbundled through Lexicata, through Clio, and everything being streamlined and automated through each of those systems for a very continuous intake flow to our ultimate case management software, which is integrated with Google and stuff on the back end for our email, and will ultimately tie into our website when that gets finished getting developed.
For those of you that haven't worked on these systems, maybe you're just starting to listen to the podcast, or you're just starting to follow, or even just learning how to implement unbundled legal services in your practice, there are systems you can put into place that are going to make that a lot more efficient. And with efficiency comes a little bit more margin, higher effective hourly rates. And that's what takes the business model of unbundling and makes it lucrative, is being able to deliver things task by task, potentially as under flat rates, but there's different ways to do it. But oftentimes it's done by flat rates, because then you can take advantage of the efficiencies such that, the clients are happy to pay one rate because other lawyers won't even offer something close to that.
Flat rates are great.
Yeah. So flat rates, task by task, are really great.
So when a lead comes in through Unbundled, Unbundled generates basically a small little data point, which is name, phone number, email, and then a little blurb that the client has typed in about whatever their situation is. Unbundled will send that data. If you use Lexicata, which is a client relations management software, which I highly recommend because it, number one, keeps everything in one space for you to have as a global idea of tracking. Unbundled is giving you all these stacks and stacks and stacks of potential people, right? And if you try to print those out or try to do them manually or make an Excel sheet or something, you're creating a lot more work in ultimately handling that data, determining, am I going to hire this person? Am I going to talk to them? Lexicata builds all that in right there in front of you, and it lets you categorize each of these people through the whole process of, I've called them. It's their decision. We have a client meeting set. We are pending engagement. They are ready to rock and roll. I've sent them a contract. There's kind of like four or five different
phases of the enrollment.
Exactly. But it tracks your pipeline value. It tracks your money, and it puts in perspective. It's one thing. It's like, God, man, I've got 3 more calls. I don't know if I can do. I mean, there's been some days where I've spent 8:45 a.m. until 7:30 at night, literally back-to-back calls, not all on new leads, but opposing counsel, where it's like, I want to throw this cell phone in the ocean right now. I can't do one more minute. But when you look at it in the aggregate, which Lexicata is very, very excellent at doing, and you're like, okay, well, if I want to just not make 3 phone calls,
it's a common expression.
It's like $11,000. I'm just going to just set on fire.
And you can visually see the value of accomplishing each task in the process. Because if you didn't have a system to track it, a lead would come in, you might make one call and then it goes into a folder and then you're on to the next one, right? You don't necessarily can see what was lost there by not following up with that person, right? And you can even assign values to that, right? So if you start to be able to see it visually, then it's motivating and clarifying, like where are the areas that the system is falling out? Where are we not?
Within the first like 3 weeks of, well, I should say, when I initially got on, and I don't recommend doing this either. When we initially got Lexicata, I did not pay for it's like $79 or $59 or some additional fee to have it automate with Unbundled. And I was like, no, I'll manually do it because it's no big deal. I'm already and after like 3 weeks of that, I was like, this is so dumb. I'm spending time and I can just have these, it doesn't make any sense. So
so we have an integration with Lexicata, which basically means when the lead's generated, post right into Lexicata so that you don't have to data enter into one system. And then Lexicata has the integration with Clio. Obviously, those two companies are coming together.
That removes all duplicate work, right? And so when you can look at that objective data and see what exactly the scope of it, like it was just like over $1 million of case value. Mm-hmm. It's just like that's a very,
it's like sobering, right?
It's just like,
once you move into the practice management, which is the delivery of services and preparation of services phase, and let's say such that you're preparing documents and so forth, the information you captured in phase one can auto-populate into forms. It can auto-populate into documents. You can auto-populate into tasks.
Your contacts and matters over here, which your case, you're going to have, each case is going to have its own number, right? You have a numbering system that all gets built out with a couple mouse clicks. Whereas prior to the setup I have right now, it was a whole other, I had to basically take this, it stopped Lexicata, and then I had to go, which was not a huge deal because I was doing 10% of the Lexicata leads as a conversion rate. I was only putting 10% of these things over here getting hired, right? Mm-hmm. But as that number increases, that was going to just expand my work. That's manual work. You want to cut out manual work. And that's what that bridge from Lexicata to Clio is. That's why it's so amazing, because when it comes in from the get-go, you ultimately are going to land over here, which is you're going to be operating in this practice management environment and space for the majority of the time you're going to be interacting with this information. The intake initially is very quick. The waiting to get signed or not signed or talking to them or whatever, that's going to be maybe a period of a week or 2 or 3, or they're going to fall off. But then you're going to be over here for 4 or 6 months on a case. And that's where you have your calendar managed and your billing and your document creation. And every case needs a contract. Every case ultimately will need a conclusion of representation letter. Every case, more likely, 95% of cases will need an order of some type. And so there's basic essential things that are kind of universal, but they need to have tweaked to whatever level of detail you want to divide it out to.
Those are the overall systems. I think there's a lot of plugins.
So Dropbox and Gmail is really our two main.
That's for sharing files.
Sharing files, we maintain. And what I'm the most excited about with Clio is that they will automatically sync with Dropbox, where we can scan, when we scan documents in, we can scan them directly into Clio now. Used to we have to scan them and then move them over somehow. We can now take that step out and scan it right into Clio, so it goes right into the client file, which will then put it over in Dropbox, and those will mirror each other. And that used to be 3 more steps in that process to get those 2 documents where they are.
Yeah, exactly. We've been to a number of different conferences. This discussion is quite common amongst, the bar associations and so forth. We have this huge access to justice problem, right? All these, I think it's like 75% probably on average across the United States of clients that are representing themselves pro se. And a huge component of that is it's just too expensive, right? They can't afford it. And so this is a major problem. And at the same time, these are the same kind of folks that you're dealing with every day that would otherwise be turned away and would become part of that statistic, but are no longer going it alone, right? And I think the myth or the issue, we bring this up all the time on the podcast, as you know, because you've heard all the episodes. It's like, attorneys think, well, if I'm serving this 75% of clients that can't afford $5 to $10,000, I'm probably not going to make very much money doing that. I don't want to go after that. I want to go after the big fish that can drop 10K at a whim and get started with me. But when you really look at the actual numbers, there's a huge market of people. And if we really break it down one phase at a time, you can actually become even more profitable delivering these unbundled services. if more and more attorneys, which is really one of the major purposes behind this podcast, can start to embrace these systems and also start to realize that this is a really lucrative business model, and there's a lot of clients because it's a win to them, right? Because they're really happy. Could you break down an example case? I know we want to wrap up here in just a minute, but let's just do a quick example case. Establish custody order, lay out the 5 to 6 phases that are common to that case, and then how you might break up a case one phase at a time. So on a custody case, first we got to file the petition, then there's the hearing.
Right, we file a petition, we contact opposing counsel, serve the responding party or the lawyer, try to figure out what they think needs to happen on their side, compare that against what we need to have on our side, see what our true issues are. That's a little bit of the internal work. Then we typically have a temporary orders hearing sooner than later if there's some urgent thing or whatever. Maybe there's exigent circumstances. 5. Maybe we have a young kiddo, so we need to have a parent facilitator for a certain amount of time because the kid's 2 weeks old as opposed to a 7-year-old. That's kind of a different analysis.
In those phases, there's a number of things that had to take place to make it happen. So how might you break up just those few steps?
If someone, typically someone...
there's the drafting the petition and then filing.
Yeah, typically if someone comes to me to draft a petition to initiate legal action, they're kind of wanting to go sign up for the full deal because they've got an objective in mind. Yeah. But when you just get some papers served on you one day and not expecting it, don't know, and then you've got a deadline all of a sudden and it's court and you're just, a lot more of those calls are like, well, I've got a hearing. I got to go to court on this. And I don't know what to. Okay, here's what we can do. You need to have your answer filed by the date on the front of the paper. It says 20 Monday after 20 days to name. That's going to be this date. So here's our date. Wherever you were served. Boom. Okay. By Monday the whatever, you got to have something on. You got to turn some paperwork in. All right. So that's thing number one. Now it says also you got a court hearing coming up. And what is that? Does that say temporary orders hearing? Usually, yep, that says temporary orders hearing on that day. Okay, so on Thursday, on Monday, you got to turn some paperwork in. On Thursday, you got to go down to court and we got to talk about it with the judge. All right. And so let's figure out what's going on in this case. Are you just going to be the only person talking on Thursday? Do you have, is grandma coming? Is aunt, uncle? Is person who watches kiddo? Is cousin who knows about the thing, who does the thing with them? Figure out how many people were involved. Do you have any documents? Okay. Well, if you, want to hire me to just do the answer, we can do that. Make sure you don't risk anything on the front end. Make sure you turn your paperwork in time. Cool. I can do that. If you don't want to, because it's going to cost more money to go to court and do it and prepare this. Those are two different things. But you don't want to not turn your paperwork in and then go to court because then you're going to be, they're going to say, "Where's your paperwork?"
Right.
We can do just that. And then if you want to also do, or if you want to do that on your own and then you just want to pay me to go to court, we can do that. Okay. So that's going to be this way. If you want me to just go to the hearing and you can bring the documents and just tell me what documents you bring in, but I don't need to mess with them beforehand. If you're fine, we don't have to do witness prep if you don't want to. If you're fine with me just kind of walking you through, you telling me what you just told me, because at this point they'll typically give me kind of the narrative of what's going on and what they feel like should happen. And I can say, we can meet the day before and we can go through, I can write out a really specified, basic direct list of questions and give that to you. So if you're nervous about it, you can take it home and study it. I can do that for you. That's going to cost more money because it's more work. Yeah. Or if you want to kind of do a little bit more condensed version that's not as expensive, but it also, you're going to have to kind of trust me a little bit more. If you trust me to go in there and get that narrative you just told me, get that out on the stand and get that in front of the judge for them to consider and then supplement that with any documents you bring, well, then we can go do that. I won't do the extra thing beforehand. And so it'll be less money, but really
it gives them options, gives them some control.
And it communicates that I'm willing to work with you at whatever level you want to work with me.
Maybe you could just give us a kind of a snapshot of what your next 3 to 6 months to a year looks like once you have the system in place to give people an idea of, what's possible as far as where you think you could be able to take this.
It is incredibly unlikely I will ever be involved with a law office, attorneys and support staff of greater than 10 people. So 9 or fewer people total. For perspective, I grossed 28 my first year in 16. I grossed 57 last year. That was on my own. Got involved with y'all. I should land about 175, 178 by the end of this year gross. And then next year, I expect to exceed 300 as a conservative estimate, but that's a very conservative estimate based on my Lexicata numbers, and that doesn't really account for the additional productivity built in by hiring that paralegal, because that just accounts for her overhead cost.
Yeah, I mean, I just appreciate sharing that, because we've had these conversations about your goals, and obviously you're coming at it from a standpoint of service, how you can do good work, help as many people as possible. But also I think it's important that attorneys also hear that this is a really great financial opportunity as well, to really take this seriously. Like, this is a call to arms. Like, attorneys that are watching this, attorneys that are listening in, if you went to, most of you, I think, went to law school because you wanted to make a difference, you wanted to serve people. And if you're inclined towards family law, immigration, estate, bankruptcy, these areas of laws, these are real life consumers, everyday people that need access to these services that otherwise aren't receiving it. So anyway, thank you for sharing, man. And
Thank you so much for having me on. I really, really appreciate it.
And as far as keeping up to date with the podcast, of course, we have the YouTube channel, youtube.com/Unbundled Attorney, or just search Unbundled Attorney on youtube.com. We're going to be releasing a new podcast episode every single month. We had a little bit of break in the fall, but we're committed to continuing to provide the education, the support, the resources, and ideas so you can implement these systems and do it with a lot of success. So thanks so much for participating. Thanks so much for being a part of this movement. And we certainly look forward to seeing you on the next episode. For more information about how our exclusive Unbundled leads can help you grow your practice, visit our website at unbundledattorney.com. You can watch each new episode of the podcast on the Unbundled Attorney YouTube channel, or if you prefer to listen, you can find us on iTunes or your favorite podcast app. And be sure to subscribe so you get each new episode as soon as it's available. And remember to leave us your review on iTunes. We read each and every one of them and really appreciate your support of the show. Once again, thanks for listening.